and then we're fucked, aren't we, basically? Oh, right,
Yep.
you did put it live.
Welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the cosmos from independent validator teams.
Hello,
It's okay,
welcome.
because we don't have any viewers.
Thanks, Mel. That's a good professional way to start the podcast this week. Hello, and welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the cosmos from independent validator teams. And welcome to our handful of very dedicated listeners who are very definitely like us, not at Cosmoverse. I don't know. Presumably there's some sexy party. Although it's like, isn't it like 1 o'clock in the afternoon there right now? So probably not a sexy party. Probably going to just predict it's going to be a panel on something where a lot of people are bullish and everybody on the panel is male, engineer. Yeah, no, okay. I'm going to stop trolling because these are literally our friends. But last Cosmo First was good, obviously. Just jealous we're not there. We've got a break in our very, very heavily well organized run of shows with guests. Do we want to say who we got on for the next couple of weeks since we got it planned?
Yeah, of course we can.
Yeah.
Or should we save it to the end?
We can save it to the end. Well, let's save it to the end. So this week we're just gonna chat shit. So we had what's it called? We had the Juno upgrade today. There was also Yumi has halted. We had Evmos upgrade. QG upgrade. Was there an Evmos upgrade as well, or did I imagine that? I don't value.
There was. Yeah, there was a couple of days ago.
Since last week, it's been a busy week for upgrades, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a busy night for upgrades. I was fucking up all night for upgrades. I had to set my alarm like 3 times to get up and fucking do upgrades.
It's been like, it feels like even we're obviously not on Evmos, but it feels like, or Osmosis is the big one where there's just shit tons of gov props and stuff all the time. But I feel like the Kalpatech notification bot has just been going off constantly this week.
It has.
I feel like
fucking Fuji, man. They've got like 5 props a day. Fuck, that's annoying. It's the new Osmosis.
Well, that's progress for you, I guess. The Dex world is just, yeah. You know the meme where it's like all those soldiers holding up the town, and then there's like all the blood, and there's like the family having a picnic, like over the beach, like that meme where it's just like validators voting on props for their delegators. That's how I would caption that meme.
Would probably have to see the meme.
That one's required.
I think this is not the first time I've verbally described that particular meme format either. But when there's an appropriate time later, I'll see if I can find it in my memes folder, which I definitely have on my laptop. And
oh my god!
I have a meme folder that's version controlled in Git. Just because, like, you know, when you see like a good meme, and you're just like, I might not like here today, gone tomorrow, right? The meme economy is fast, right? Easy come, easy go. You're not gonna use it again. But like in a couple of years, you might be like, yeah, what was that meme format that was like quite hot in 2017 with like, the trombone kid following the other kid or something like that. And like, you just need to like reference what the format was so you can remember it in your head to like describe it to somebody. So yeah.
Do you put like a commit description when you commit a meme?
Well, as anybody who's ever worked with me knows, my commits, even on business critical code, are usually pretty ropey.
Update, typo,
update stuff. Update stuff.
Well, they're either very eccentric or they're just kind of trolling. Like you could in the just before HAL Alpha went live when we were bug fixing, there's like the lyrics to a whole verse of Another One Bites the Dust by Queen, but just in chunks, like one line at a time per commit.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, because you have to do it backwards as well, so that it actually shows correctly in the UI. Well, anyway, this is the kind of shit I do, and then people are like, "Well, what actually was in? What actually is this branch?" Because all the commits are trash, Frey, and you're like, Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
About that,
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm that guy. I'm that guy that hides ASCII art and source code, and then eventually somebody finds it, and they're just like, "Why did you do this? This isn't even that funny."
I don't remember doing it.
This just makes it bigger, and you're like, "Well, clearly you just get the compiler to remove comments, and then it doesn't make it bigger." Anyway,
I actually created a spicy meme this week. I'm a
Did you?
meme creator now, yeah. But like no one understood it, so I didn't distribute.
is this your Atom 2.0?
Atom 2.0.
Oh, your Atom 2.0 thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No one got
You
it.
said you wanted to talk about Atom. So what's your take? What's your take on Atom 2.0 from Cosmoverse?
I didn't say I wanted to talk about Atom.
Well, you just did, and you put it on the spreadsheet.
Actually, I didn't put it on the spreadsheet.
Number one, he's never put anything on the spreadsheet, so you knew that was wrong as soon as you said it.
Hey, I put something on the spreadsheet this week.
You did?
It looks like it's on there. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, it's on there. Yeah.
I think I put Atom 2.0 question mark. Was my addition to the spreadsheet.
Is the question mark? Should we talk about it, or is that your review of Atom?
It's both.
I'll explain
both things.
I'll explain that meme, right? So it's my understanding that Atom 2.0 is like trying to change the inflation, so it's from this constant whatever it is to like taper out to zero, like minus 1% a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was funny because whilst the inflation's been constant all this time, the people who have been like just getting money from the ICF delegations that are crap node operators have been raking in the Atom, and now like just as they change to a decent delegation program, they like snatch away the inflation. So I thought it was a funny meme, but maybe I'm just not a funny guy.
That's not mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I needed it explained to me, but that's also because I don't obviously understand anything. As soon as there's like,
you weren't exactly Mr. Current Events on that one. You're like, what's Atom 2.0?
I mean, like I'm obviously aware it's a thing, but I hadn't like had time to read. Like we're trying to launch a protocol at the moment, and there was this Juno upgrade you might have heard of. That was that came closer to the wire than I think would have ideally liked. I think we tried to have our cake and eat it was the problem with that upgrade.
But we did that upgrade in Uni, right?
Yeah, so we obviously had the Uni one, which then had the little wibbly wobbly problem with the cache, which meant we basically backed out of it. So the problem there was like the problem was we basically engaged in wishful thinking, and if you engage in wishful thinking, you get stung, right? And we knew that there was a new XWASM due out almost exactly when we wanted to release, so we were like, oh well, if we just push back like 3 or 4 days, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Whereas what we should have done was just shipped what we already had, and instead we tried to use the new version and then basically had to then back out of that change. Which it kind of ended up being okay because we were spinning up Uni 4 at the time anyway, but obviously Uni 4 RIP.
Short-lived, 1 block.
Yeah, didn't make it. Didn't make it.
Right.
We learned something very fun in the process, but it didn't make it. But that just made meant we end up only having 2 days left. So
give me the TLDR on why Uni 4 didn't make it, because I just set and forget and went to sleep. So
right. So my understanding my understanding is basically state sync was set on a number of nodes. Right. And so I think there was several things. There was several different. There were only about 8 or 9 nodes in Genesis, maybe a couple more, and several were misconfigured because people were reusing boxes.
Right.
And essentially, one of the nodes, must have successfully broadcast a proposal, essentially like a valid block ahead of where we were, and then everybody just app-hashed. And at that point, you're like, well, we can't recover from a snapshot because we're on block 2. Sorry, we're on block 2. We've got past the Genesis block, and then we've all app-hashed. Like, there's no place to recover from other than starting from a new Genesis. So Uni 5 was literally the same Genesis.
Wait, why can't you recover from one block snapshot?
Well, because block 2 had already been committed.
Somehow. We don't know how, though.
Yeah. So, well, I think the problem was it actually wasn't block 2 that had been committed. I think it was actually like block 1,200,000 or whatever Uni 3 was on. But I think
someone proposed a block that's like millions ahead.
But that's the thing that I'm not clear. So because basically the final log that I saw, I mean, unfortunately, I guess I've lost the logs because we recycled that box as well. But the final log I saw was very weird. It was like evidence received of block a lot in this network, but they should be distinct because they are different networks. But there was obviously something screwy going on. But then you think that could have also been maybe I'd locally misconfigure something as well, which is why that node was reporting a problem. I think there were quite a few mistakes on.
I wonder if it's a remote signer thing. Like, I wonder if someone just changed the network ID, but still had the same state file on their remote signer.
But that still has the chain ID as well, right?
When still has chain ID. Yeah.
Because that was, but you can change it in your signer.
Yeah,
like in remember you can still change it.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's possible actually, because I know quite a few people obviously are experimenting around with their setups on testnet, which is the place to do it. But I guess the difference between like testnet and mainnet is on mainnet, if you mess around with your remote signer, the only node at risk is you. Whereas I guess there is, a small chance on a testnet of 9 nodes that you might be the proposer and propose a completely mad block.
That seems still good, though. You think there'd be like some sort of check and balance to see that you're incrementing.
Yeah. Well, so this is the thing. I think the way Tendermint works. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong. Somebody who knows the fundamentals of the state machine better can chip in. But I think as long as you broadcast evidence of a block ahead of now, and it's accepted as a proposal, I think you're all good, basically. Like, as in, all the other nodes will go, well, I have evidence of block 5. You've just given me 900. Okay. I mean, I guess I didn't know about the intervening blocks. I guess the problem would be that you then wouldn't have any, like, there would be a disconnect between the Merkle root, right? And then it would blow up.
Yeah. There would definitely be a disconnect.
Yeah, because obviously those two histories are completely unrelated. So that's why I think you would, in that case, you would just fail to reach consensus, right?
Yeah, and I guess it's just
to be fair, actually was what happened. Everybody was dialing, and we lost consensus. So maybe what happened was simply that there were 2 Merkle roots, and everybody was like,
"Don't know."
Everybody,
we'll wait for the next one.
Right, half of them had 1, and I guess the proposer might have had state sync or. Doesn't make any sense though, because state sync is just.
There were 3 nodes with state sync on that shouldn't have it on.
But there was if there's no data,
if
there's no data, because the data would not be there, because the node wouldn't start on Uni 4, right? So if the data wasn't there and state sync was on, all it would do is try to reach out to an RPC to try to understand.
Yeah, it would just try to get Uni 3 state, wouldn't it?
Well, it would probably try to get Uni 4 state from the RPC node that is configured. And it would start dialing for that. But I guess if it was also the proposer, I don't know how that would work. I don't know. But it wouldn't be the proposer because there's no state there. So I don't know. That's weird.
Exactly. So something very bizarre happened. But the solution was essentially once the 3 nodes that were configured with state sync on were fixed, the network started fine. So it looks like that was the smoking gun. But I also know anecdotally that a couple of people had issues with remote signers. We actually had problem with our remote signer, but we actually fixed it the night before, and then snuck it out in the final change to the Genesis, because that's the privilege of being the person that compiles the Genesis. But that was a really dumb mistake. And you two, I think I sent you a message being like, hang on a minute, have I done this right? And I think both of you were like, you've done that wrong, here's why. So for those listening, what what we had done was we'd recycled a box and forgotten that obviously with a remote signer, you get rid of your keys from that box that you then use for your remote signer. When the process reinitializes, it obviously creates a new private val key for you. Now, that val key will be the one that's used to create the GenTX for a network. If you then run a GenTX command with whatever key you want to use from that box. So we use like just a burner key for each testnet we run. And we tend to, not always, but quite often either run it on, we've got a couple of Linux boxes just knock it around for doing stuff on. But for uni, this time we just ran it on the uni box we had, which obviously the val key was there, but then had completely forgotten, of course, that it won't be the same val key as the private as the signer. And so the GenTX looked kind of weird, and it was like, And then it was only the night before where I kind of realized that something must be up. Sense check with these two fellas, and they were like, "Yeah, it must be the wrong val key. Think about it."
So I got to tell you, the only reason I knew is because I've done it before.
There you go.
So
it's obvious once you realize it, though, that obviously the key matter of the signing key that submits the GenTX or the create validator command and the private val key are obviously completely independent of one another. The only reason I had the realization was because we're doing stuff on Aptos, where again they have loads and loads of keys, but the fundamental concept is the same, right? Which is that you have wallets over here and you have validated private keys over here, and one attaches to the other, but they're created in a different process to one another, right? They are independent.
So the reason I thought mine would work, right? Because what I did was this was like a post Genesis creation, and so I was like, it was a test net. I was like, I'm going to like connect the signer first. And so I took a key, just the random key, and I chucked it on the signer and I connected it to the node. Because you can like have a remote signer that will connect to the node just to boot it up. And it doesn't sign any blocks. It just, you just get no pre-commits all the way through. But I thought that being connected to Tendermint, that when you ran that Tendermint show, node show validator or whatever it is, that it would actually funnel through the one from the pub key from the remote signer, because that would make sense. But it just picks up the local priv validator key that's in the local config dial. So it seemed fucking stupid to me.
That's exactly the mistake I made as well. I was like, because the private listen address is obviously getting the pub key. Sorry, when you're using TMKMS, at least a threshold sign and probably not. Well, a threshold sign, it will still be it'll still be
by the rough leader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it will be the same pub key. So intuitively, I was like, well, the pub key must be in memory right now.
Using it, yeah.
Yeah, if the signer's up, then it must be in memory. But no, it's it's completely read off disk. It's completely read off disk as far as I can tell. So.
Yes.
So I think what we might be, dense node operator fucking doing is maybe it's like that the remote signers actually do sign from there and inject into the network. I don't know.
They do. Yeah, they do. They're passing that back to the node. The node just turns into a relayer at that point.
Yeah, that's the conclusion.
Like relays the signature. Yeah. So maybe that's because this doesn't send the key at all.
Well, that's the conclusion, isn't it? Is that it's not sending the pub key because
just ask for a signature and it gets one.
Right, correct. But that also makes sense because if you think about if you're using a remote signer, not a threshold signer, but a remote signer with a hardware security module, then obviously it's going to sign against the hardware security module on that node and then just broadcast.
That's right. And it's using the node as the broadcast method, right? It's like
exactly.
That's a broadcast method.
It's almost just like having a private RPC that's on a different box, if you like.
That's exactly what it is, right? So like even in the horcrux, I have 2 or 3 nodes running. They're just nodes, and people call them validators. They're not validators. They're just nodes, right? That has burned keys on them, and if the if the listener isn't working, those nodes won't start, right? Like
Yeah.
they will halt because they're not doing anything other than relaying, and so if there's nothing on the relay side, they will not start.
Exactly. It's just like it's just a way of privately peering an RPC that can't be connected to, if you like.
So the basic result is we're all dumb shits and didn't really know how it worked, but now we do because of testnets. So let's move on.
No, but this is kind of the joy, I think, of testnets, and this is also like why I'm like, it's not like everybody needs to be in every testnet. Like we don't run on absolutely every testnet on every chain we do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is. I'm always a bit like dubious about validators that don't run on any testnet. Like you should have a sandbox where you can learn these things and make these mistakes, because we literally all do. We've been doing this 18 months or longer in some cases, and you still like learn things where you're like, okay, that's particularly with the state sync thing. Like I didn't think that would be so catastrophic, but evidently it was.
And not only with that, but also running multiple nodes on testnets. Because usually I think where people kind of fuck the pooch, that's a weird saying, where people usually fuck up is when they're juggling multiple keys or they're juggling multiple nodes or there's a halt. It's not just starting it and letting it run. Like it's usually when something happens. And so something happens on testnets pretty often. And where somebody, like we just had a situation, or not us, but we know somebody got, I don't want to steal the thunder for later on the new graphic. I don't want to talk about that yet, but somebody had an issue because I think they were running out of drive space or something. And so while they were going to get ready to prune one, they had another one already running as a backup. And so they started on both at the same time and they moved the keys across, things like that. Like that's just the fundamental not understanding of what's happening there.
But that's also just like why not be down?
Yeah.
Well, that's 13 hours. You've got 13 hours to play with.
I know.
Like, just be down for an hour. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, the prune process doesn't take that. I mean, we just build a new box, and even on AWS, like build a new box, throw away the old one.
Yep.
That's the way of doing it. Or Polka choose snapshots. Again, always shout out to the main man, the Polka Massive, the original. As soon as I started saying polka, I was just thinking, do you remember that? Do you remember in Home Alone when the mother's trying to get back to the house, and then John Candy's there with like the Midwest polka band, and he's like, "Oh, you must have heard our song, polka 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 polka."
Christmas polka, polka in the winter.
Yeah,
none of these.
You know how
polka
these
polka
songs
polka.
Yeah, exactly. It has the bit that goes like polka polka. Like whenever I say polka more than once, I'm just like, oh my god, polka 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 polka.
No, it doesn't. Not familiar. No.
But like polka snapshots. Polka snapshot server takes like 20 minutes to download a compressed zip, and then you can be back up.
Yeah. No, I agree. Even that, or like we state sync nodes all the time now. Even if that takes a while, I mean, there's a lot of ways. I think there is a I don't have an issue with like boards or other types of tools that look long term around missed blocks. Like I think I'm overall okay with that. Like that there's a place for that as well. I do think that there is a for some people think that if it's if you have that much miss, then and it means it's a bad operator, and that doesn't necessarily mean that.
Well, there's blocks of misses, and then there's you just fucking missing half of the shit all the time. Like there's bad, there's different kinds of missing. But cause less harm here says, don't you get a gold star for 100% uptime? I think so.
That's how it works, isn't it? I'm still waiting.
That's how I operate.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the benefits of off-node signing. I mean, that's really what that gives you, is it allows you to separate the node from the sign, and so you could increase your signing percentage much higher.
Yeah, well, that's where we're at now. It's like we've been using TMKMS for like last 6 months, and that's cool. It works fine, works really well. But I think we've been talking for a while about like running horcrux, but the there's a lot of different things about, I guess, like the CPU consumption and like how to, I guess, like essentially what it comes down to is I don't think Tendermint is a complicated enough piece of software. Like keeping it up and signing and consensus is complicated, all those things that are more like at application level. But like the fundamental core of the stack, it feels like having a raft of signers is working on a threat model we don't yet face.
I don't think it's necessarily threat. It's. I mean, you at AWS, I think you have a lesser chance than maybe others. But if whatever node you're using to run TMKMS, or if it's a single horcrux node or whatever else, if that's unavailable, you're not signing, right? So that would be for and 2 of 3.
Oh, is his power cable out?
So I don't agree with what. Well, I mean, so what? Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. What the hell?
What the hell, man? So,
the hell?
to what Usurper was saying, right? He's right. If your signing goes down, then you're not signing. But like for me, I operate everything in business on a risk management basis, right? So risk reward and complexity and stuff like that. So I know you were dying to mention it, the Frey. I run what I call degen horcrux, which is where I don't use. So I like to use the benefit of horcrux in that you can connect to multiple nodes, and for me, like I don't see the risk reward of using a more complex system like the Raft signer. So, in my opinion, if something happens on my signer or my signers, or the signer for the network, and say it gets cut off and I start missing on a network or multiple networks or whatever, like I've got it on pretty high 9 servers, and the likelihood of it being down for a long time is pretty low. And like we say, it's okay to miss a block of signatures, right? So there's other people that'll pick up the slack. You don't have to have 100% uptime. And as long as you have a backup plan, and a documented playbook of how you're going to handle the situation, I think it's fine. So I have like a backup of my horcrux signer, right? And so all I have to do, if my main signer goes down, I just spin up the other one on a different place, on a different service provider, and then I just change all of my firewall settings to block the other signer and allow the new signer, and then it just continues. So I think like downtime can be pretty well mitigated at a pretty low risk. And I think for the additional complexity of running a raft at this stage, it's just not really worth it. So the result is that I can run 2 or 3 sentries off a single horcrux signer, and I'm able to get really good uptime because I don't have all the latency issues of talking to the raft. As long as there's at least one of my sentries that are in the same region, I get really good uptime everywhere now. So even like on Secret and Evmos, which most people are in the hundreds or thousands on an ongoing basis of misses, I'm in the teens most of the time. So I think it's a good compromise.
And the compromise also, I mean, the complexity of we run 2 of 3, not on all chains though, just because we started and we had what we started to run into was some of the challenges of running your own hardware stack and your own data center, which is that hardware gets older. But now we're buying more, so it's kind of changing now again. But that 2 of 3, the only issue I have with it is that just the complexity. Like it just has the once you set it up and we made that changeover and everything else is running, which is fine. And what happens with me is I have decent documentation on it, but when I need to go back into something that I haven't looked at in 2 or 3 months, like if there's a issue or something else, I start to get freeze, right? Like you have to go relearn what you've learned in the past, and like it's not it's a complicated structure in terms of what's going on there. In some cases in the config files and everything else. So even if it's well documented, it's not as approachable as like a single either signing on the node or, a single horcrux node that's not, dealing with which boxes 1, 2, and 3. And I have, running a bunch of those on these different boxes. And so that can get a little bit complicated quick, which is complication in this type of stuff is never a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that always sort of, again, like whenever I have to go back to something that I haven't done a lot of maintenance on for like, let's say a week or a month or something like that, you're always just like, you're like, say, looking at the firewall rule set, and you're like,
fuck.
I mean, I've written down what all of these things are, but what if the day, because it's that thing of like, you're like, it's only as good as the documentation. What if I mixed up those two?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
How, like, I can, the only way I can know that I didn't screw it up now is by manually going and checking it all at source. And then suddenly like a 5-10 minute job is like an hour, 2-hour job, like going through everything and double checking your work. And like, and I mean, I'm paranoid. So I do that. And then something that should have been quick takes up like half a day. But that's again, like but it's back to like, even if my node was down, I would check. Because it's like the risk of double signing, tombstoning's forever, or it should be, but
not really, right?
Some people can come back from the dead like that
the same day. Same day. It's fine.
Do you remember that meme from a few years ago where it's like there's like a truck driving down the motorway, and somebody basically is like, what's going on over there? And like there's like a single coffin on the truck, and the coffin lid bangs open, and a guy just gets out and starts doing the Michael Jackson Thriller dance.
Yeah.
That is, some people are able to do that when they get tombstoned, and I fear we would not be able to. So yeah, like just miss some blocks. It's not a big deal. Miss an hour, miss 2 hours, whatever. But then I guess most of the major like disasters we've had to deal with have been at chain level anyway, when the entire chain's down. When the entire chain's down, it doesn't matter if you're not signing, does it really?
Doesn't matter. No, it doesn't.
Which, speaking of which, is Yumi back up? You're on, well, I know Null, you're on Yumi, aren't you?
I am not on Yumi.
No.
I thought you were on Yumi. Knowing me, knowing Yumi,
Knowing me and knowing.
It's a bit of an old reference, that one, but
yeah. So just sorry, I was you probably heard all my caravan noises. I was making a cup of coffee, which is a complex assignment in a caravan. Yeah, I guess the only thing that I find, so just segueing back to the horcrux thing. So the only thing I find that is a risk is that you don't have a sharded key. So if someone was to get onto your horcrux signer, single signer, you've got an unsharded key there that you don't then need to go find the other shards to reconstruct. But in saying that, there is no firewall rules allowing any connections in to my horcrux. So it's unlikely that anyone's going to be able to go find the other node to get the WireGuard VPN and then be able to like know the path to the horcrux signer, because you don't need to have incoming connections on horcrux. You only need to have outgoing. So there's nothing open unless there was some serious vulnerability in the service provider. It's very unlikely that anyone's ever going to be able to get in there. So, I mean, what is the risk profile? It's pretty fucking low.
And even if somebody did get the validator private key, funds are safe for you anyway. So
but you might get double signed. I still don't understand why anyone goes so much fucking effort just to double sign you.
Especially as it turns out, the reputational damage from a double sign is fuck all.
So that's a good segue into double signing. So it boggles my fucking mind that people will suffer a double sign on Evmos of 10% and then fucking redelegate to the same operator. It just boggles the mind.
Okay,
we all make mistakes.
twice.
We got a new segment. We got Tombstone of the Week. So we're into Tombstone of the Week.
Tombstone, no way!
How long have you been waiting to drop that?
I very much have been waiting to drop that. That took me 25 minutes to make because I had to watch loads and loads of traffic fail videos on YouTube till I found a truck getting tipped over.
So Alex, I suggest that in the future you keep that rolling and then you actually put a little face on the truck that is like the validator that got Tombstone, so we can go Tombstone of the Week. Whoopang!
Okay, I'll take requests. Like we can work it out. Yeah, I guess most validators have a logo. We could make this even more interactive. Like if we're going to escalate the shit posting to the next level. So yeah, who was it? So who was it that got that got Tombstone this time?
So
Space
this was Space.Fi IO. So it's interesting because they have like all this other stuff around, right? Like they've got their D-app stuff that they're building, and it's so Usurper. Were you hanging around during the in that chat, or have you gone and reviewed the chat from that period when they were trying to figure out that they got Tombstone?
It was after upgrade, right? I think so. So what happened? I think was when let me go back and get the right versions. But 2 upgrades ago, there was an issue with the state sync. I'm sorry, with pruning with the version. For some reason, it didn't show up in testnet and Evmos. It ended up showing up in mainnet. And nodes would not be able to stay on chain if they had pruning enabled. So this was, I think, when the 8.10 upgrade, which was back on the 15th. So a couple weeks ago, everybody went to prune nothing. And so prune nothing and kind of like you get, drives actually grow pretty quick, right? And so I think for folks who had 100, depending on how much size they had, it was eating up a decent amount of disk space a day. And so when this went through, when was this? I forget when this, so this was off-chain upgrade. It's not in a proposal, right? So there was a version that was updated to add the block height in there, and it also had kind of Cosmovisor indications within that binary. Then it went to 8.2.0 that allowed pruning. And so I think what my story is on this one is that based on what I saw in chat was the thing was out of space. They had a separate node that was going. The thing was out of space. 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 The thing was out of space.
Knowles just gone. It does Vegas himself.
How do we explain this? All right, the thing was out of space. 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 The thing was out. They could stop. They could stop.
This is sensational.
I'm on a phone. How does it not happen to me? Anyway, so they brought up a second node. I think they were moving keys over. Whether it was past upgrade, they put the validator key on the second node, and at some point within there, they were both running at the same time, and they got boom, Tombstone. So that was it. And I think they didn't understand. I think there was some confusion, at least what I saw on channel. There was some confusion on exactly how that worked and what Tombstone mean. And there was a lot of that, how do I unjail myself? Which is always like the first question, right? Hey, how do I unjail myself? And then somebody goes and looks and say, well,
I guess to be fair, if you miss the log line where it says evidence of what it says, something like evidence of double sign.
Obvious.
Yeah. And that it does, from memory, because I've seen a double sign, I've double signed myself on a testnet before that, probably the same one you did as well, right? The Astarte one where
back in the day,
we killed the network. There was like a rogue smart contract test or something like that, and we broke the network. And then Todd was like, should we try seeing what happens if we all delete our state file? And the answer was you double side.
Right. And I think a bunch of us did, right? And that was the end of that network.
Yeah, it creates a new one when it cycles, and then you all double sign is what happens.
It all happens. Yeah.
And it says in all capitals something like evidence of double side detected! ! That's
it. And then when you're right, the log goes, like it just keeps going past, right?
Yeah, and then it just starts dialing again, doesn't it?
It'll keep dialing. Yeah.
It looks like it's dialing. I mean, it is dialing. But
I think it's dialing.
It's just converted itself. It's like the quickest way ever to convert your validator into an RPC, right?
Correct. That's right. That's right.
so unless you got that port open, it's not really benefiting anybody though. So
I think that team did not understand the structure of it, which I get, this is complicated stuff, but whatever.
Well,
and
there
then
was a clear misunderstanding of
yes,
where the pre-validator key was, so that could have been catastrophic in itself.
Yes,
and also, even a basic understanding of tombstoning and double signing.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, they really could have benefited from some time in some test nets and
some
breaking stuff. Yeah.
But I think
so. If anyone's interested sorry about my, I could still hear you guys just fine, but
yeah, Usurper was just in an infinite loop coming out of
it was
your
awful.
mic.
It was miserable.
I have a dock, right? And when I'm using my dock, it will just at some point freeze everything. So all of the monitor will still work, but all of the peripherals will just stop, but hold their state somehow. And then it's just I have to unplug it and plug it back in for it to work again.
Yeah, we'll do cause less harm. Has said, can we get a remix? We'll do a jungle remix of what just happened. When we pull the audio off for the podcast.
Did my audio go into a loop or something? Did it? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
It was just a kind of locked 3-second loop or 1 second loop or something like that. Sorry for all of you listening on podcast players.
I'm sure
just leave that in.
Just leave it in. It's part of the joy. It's part of the joy. So, ding, ding, ding. Double sign of the week.
Yes.
One day, inshallah, it will never be one of us. But maybe one day we will be saying goodbye to one of the fellas floating off down the Nile. Wait, no, it's not the Nile, is it? Which one is it where they burn the boat and then is that the Vikings where they burn the boat and then they
push the Black Sea or whatever?
Well, yeah, I guess it's going to. Is it going to Valhalla? Like, how does that work? Okay, like if you know about Viking folklore and you know to what I'm referring and you know what the thing actually is and how it works, put it in the chat.
They're like happy places, Valhalla.
Yeah, I think you burn the body. You put the body in a boat, don't you? And then burn it, and then Valhalla. Right? That's how it works.
People are gonna hate you for fucking this up.
They're a happy place.
Yeah. No. Ganges, you get burnt first. Sorry. So Ben Davis has said in the chat, are you mixing the Vikings and the River Ganges? I
was thinking Ganges when you said it. I was thinking it was
no. You get burnt first. You get cremated, and then you get scattered in the Ganges. Whereas, like I think the longboat thing is like you get pushed out on fire. Yeah. Do you know who the actor David Tennant is? He was Doctor Who for a while. He's been in a bunch of other stuff. He was in do you remember Good Omens? Was it called Good Omens? It's like is it Neil Gaiman book? There was like an Amazon Prime thing of it a few years ago. I think it's called Good Omens. He was in that. Was he in that? Maybe he was in that. I can't remember.
Was he burned and dumped in the Ganges?
No. But he was in an independent film a few years ago where somebody really famous played the grandfather. It wasn't like John Cleese, but it was somebody like that played the grandfather, and he just quietly dies during the course of the film. But while he's taking the kids to the beach, and these little kids, without the adults, are just like, "What do we do with this dead body?" And they're like 4 and 5 years old, and so they put him in his little rowboat, and they fucking set fire to him to give him like a Viking funeral. They push him off into the Scottish loch. Yeah. And then because he had said to the kids, like, don't tell your parents, but how I wanted it to be like, it was just like a running joke that he had told the kids several times, like, when I'm dead, just like burn me and push me out into the loch, like, and they're just like, ah, granddad. And then they actually do it, and then obviously the adults arrive just as this boat and there's just on fire, and they're like, oh my god, have you murdered granddad? They're like, no, it's okay, he was already dead. And then the adults are like, what? I can't remember I think it was like, the film was called something like What Did You Do Last Weekend, or so. It was some like weird, and it also had Rosamund Pike in it, who's been in loads of stuff since. And yeah, it's a very weird film anyway, but quite good, quite bleak, dark comedy. There's only like one or two very funny moments, and obviously I've just ruined one of them because you're like, oh yeah, the kids are really going to burn their granddad. That is quite funny, but also black comedy.
Do we want to talk about the cosmos now, or
Why? So let's
talk about let us talk about liquid staking. How about that? So there's a couple of liquid staking operators that have popped up, and a couple of liquid staking operators that want to pop up. So there's currently a Commonwealth thread for Staffy. So that's terribly close to Spacefire, which I was like getting my wires crossed with a little while ago. But anyway, so maybe someone can tell me who there is operating, because I know that there is Stake Easy, and I know that Spacefire wants to come on. So these are both like contract solutions, right? And then there was another contract-based liquid staking protocol, I'm sure, and then a couple of chain-based ones. So can someone give me the list, the full list?
No.
Stride, Quicksilver, Stake Easy, Juno.
Juno, right?
Yeah, the one that was like Raw DAO are looking to acquire. That's Juno, right?
Yep.
So Stride and Quicksilver are the chain-based ones, right?
Yeah.
And Usurper, you're on one of those, are you? I'm not.
We validate on Stride.
On Stride, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to validate Quicksilver, I think, just because
we're trying to. We'll see.
Just because obviously, like, we have to do the opposite thing from RHINO's business plan. We just look at everything they do, and we're like, we'll do the opposite.
Do the opposite; it'll be better.
So, I mean, to me, they both seem like something that can just be done with a contract. So I just didn't join either.
Well, that's the thing. So the Staffy hub, Starfi.
Staffy.
I guess they have a Comic Sans logo, so maybe it's supposed to be Starfi, as in star. When you wish upon a Comic Sans star.
They do not have a Comic Sans.
Oh yeah, they do.
No way.
Yes, they do.
What's the URL?
I don't know. They screwed it up on their Commonwealth proposal, so the page didn't load properly. But yeah, I screen grabbed it and put it on Twitter. It's definitely Comic Sans. But yeah, they asked for 2% of all Juno to be used as liquidity incentives. So
how exactly what liquidity incentives? So they just want the community pool to hand over 2% of all the Juno.
Yeah, for the RHINO token, I guess, and Juno. Like
for liquidity or liquidity incentives? Because it's
liquidity.
That's
stupid. I think incentive. Well, no, actually, I think it was liquidity pool. Actually,
I mean that's still stupid.
I mean, it's all stupid.
2%.
It's like wherever that "sign me up, bro" meme has got to. Just that. Sign me up, bro.
The funny thing about building liquidity is, right, that so these dexes are a little bit funny economically in that the more liquidity you have in a dex, right, the harder it is to shift the price. So if you have a lot of liquidity in a pool and the price is high, then you've got a lot of exit liquidity, right, for when the price is going down. But if you stuff a whole heap of liquidity into pools when the price is low, then it makes it harder to push the price up. You need a lot more incoming money and a lot more volume on that pool and buy pressure to actually be able to push it up than if it had low liquidity. So you kind of hurt the ability for the price to rise in the long term without a lot of incoming capital, but you protect it somewhat from sharp drops. So I wonder if people realize that building liquidity right now could make life a little bit difficult in the future to be able to bring the price up.
Well, because it privileges inherent stability at the current price level.
Yeah, because you've got a lot more liquidity in the pool. So, that X plus Y equals 0 becomes harder to move because of math and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you've already got 2 variables in there, so I'm kind of lost because I only did maths till like age 14 or whatever. So
yeah, never used a variable in programming.
never heard of it, Your Honor. No. Obviously, I do understand what a variable is, but I only use constants because mutability is bad.
Yeah, that's the thing that
Niche joke.
I don't know, constant. So yeah,
well, it's not like we're limited on memory these days, is it? It's not like we've got like only 2 kilobytes of memory to play with. It's like, oh, got to make everything mutable so that we can, optimize our memory. It's like, I think we got enough memory at this point, lads. Memory is not your problem. Well,
I think early versions of Evmos would beg to differ.
Well, that's good. Well, but then isn't all the tenement chains are basically single threaded, right? That's the problem.
Memory leaks. So, I mean, is that something that you guys would have considered? Like, is that something that you think people would consider?
What, 2%?
Like, I don't see people. No, the like increasing liquidity at a low point in the market. Do you think people don't give a fuck? They're just like more liquidity.
Well, so increasing liquidity in what sense? You mean because this is liquidity going specifically to like a pool and a DEX. It's not like just generic liquidity. Although I guess the stake. Well, are you saying the liquid staking itself is an increasing liquidity? I suppose it is, isn't it? Even as a derivative.
No, sorry, I kind of drifted off the liquid staking. I was just because of their liquidity incentives, and there seems to be like a drive all the time to increase liquidity in DEXs. So, like at the moment, there's talk about what is that DEX that they have there? The I can't remember. Do you remember it, Usurper? The one that held all the coins across that bloody bridge that got wrecked?
No,
what was that?
Mad?
Yeah, no.
Well, that was the bridge, but what's the hang on. So the DEX is Diffusion. Diffusion's got a proposal in Commonwealth, I think, to get a whole heap of the community pool to increase incentives to try and bring some liquidity back to Diffusion. And there's, already incentives on Osmosis, and it always seems to be that, chains, people are always pushing for incentives to increase the liquidity in these DEXs. But do you think they consider the economic environment when they're pushing for increases in liquidity, or is it just like we just want more liquidity no matter what?
Honestly, I think the majority of the time the liquidity is to allow the founders to exit. Let's be real. I think somebody on Twitter made this joke where they were like, I know what this is, and they literally linked our first episode, and it was just, I think the point where I think Schultzy said something like, well, the thing is, all of this is just liquidity for the founders to exit or something. And I was like, it's already, you see, Schultzy's already said it. There you go.
Someone needs to start like a Game of Nodes shorts channel. I think it'd get a lot more views than like our channel. But...
Well, just because like our single sentence shit posts are actually like surprisingly
just
pathetic.
Snippets of dumb shit we say on here. Be like, oh, this thing, and then you can just take that completely out of context and make everyone mad on Twitter.
Well, it's like that the line from Spinal Tap, right, where he's like, it's a fine line between stupid and
clever.
Genius.
Well, that's just clever. It. He just pinwheels, doesn't he? And then somebody has to say clever, and he's like, yeah, clever. All right,
that's it.
Yeah.
What
was that on?
Spinal Tap. Yeah, of course, you haven't seen Spinal Tap, have you?
I watched it.
God
damn. I still haven't watched it.
I don't want you to.
Maybe you're not good enough
to shit on it.
Maybe I'm the meme.
Maybe I'm the meme.
if you react
So
as badly as you did to Heat, then maybe you shouldn't watch it because it is
That-
probably the funniest film one of the funniest films ever made, and I'll be really sad.
Ben Davis says liquidity going up is great if you assume that TVL is the best way to measure a deck's success.
I mean,
How do you measure success?
Well, how do you
with
measure
TVL
success? I think the owners, the founders measure success in terms of exit, right?
Mhm.
That bit seems to be very similar to when I worked in startups. But it is, I mean, the problem is it is always like it is another reminder though that like shitposting aside, we are early enough that we don't even have a good, I would say a good agreed set of metrics for what defines a good project and a bad project, right? I mean, that's why like people like Rama and stuff who
Mhm.
go and do due dil on stuff and try and come up with a set of metrics whether a project is like good or bad or whatever. They have to do a lot of legwork and then quite a lot of context setting to even like explain their findings in such a way that you can get a grasp of or at least like fucking idiots like me can get a grasp of like what's actually being said, because a lot of the metrics are quite meaningless in the abstract, I think, because it's all back to a lot of what we've talked about in the past, where a lot of it's based on kind of, I guess, like what sort of economic utility, but like in a very spot fashion, like quite a short-termist. Like it's a slice of time. It doesn't really have any. It doesn't have a lot of bearing on like where that will be. In any meaningful or
I'll tell you what,
sustainable way.
man. Doing due diligence is a portal to making Maxi boys angry. You want engagement, do some due diligence.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
how many? I'm sure Rama's got more Twitter followers than this podcast, so that's maybe what we need. We need a due deal segment where we just absolutely sledge some projects. That would help.
Yeah, like maybe like another podcast during the week and be like gone due dil, stride.
All of us just putting on like the boring hat from previous jobs and actually doing due
Like
deal.
one of those green translucent brim things.
Oh yeah, like an accountant's hat. Yeah, 100%.
Fucking
I'll be
hell,
back.
this
Take a
Space
phone
Five, this Space Five validator.
Are you still reading the conversation back?
Well, I was going back. I wanted to see if the Evmos Foundation was a delegator into that, because I think they had like 400,000 or 500,000 Evmos, which would be somewhere
wow.
in they were probably in the mid 40s. Schulte's got 459. We're number 105 in this, 104 in this list with 157. Right now they're at 107 with 153,000 after they restarted the new validator since they were slashed. So they ended up, I think that slash was about 40 or 50,000 Evmos. And they came back, said that they wanted to be able to repay that 10% a month over 10 months, I thought is what they said. I don't know. I mean, it depends if they get back up in the high enough in the set to do that. But, yeah, I mean, 4,000 Evmos a month is a pretty decent chunk to be able to pull out of commissions to try to pay that back. So we'll see if that happens or not. But
I mean,
yeah,
these are they're also very big numbers.
they are. Yeah. I mean, it could have been a lot larger too, actually.
Yeah. So like, we're definitely into idiot question time, but the double sign penalty on Evmos is pretty high, huh?
It's 10%. I think it kind of matches everybody else.
I thought most chains it's like 5%.
Oh, is it? I don't know. I thought Juno was 10 as well, wasn't it?
I mean,
I can go look.
I should fucking know, given the number of times that I've read and reread and rewritten parts of that Genesis file, but I can't actually tell you off the top of my head.
Oh yeah, Juno's 5%. I think that's one of the lower ones, though. I
felt like it was 5%, but I didn't want to 100% commit to it in case it turned out to be like 20, and then it'd be like, you're just way off, Frey. What the fuck? But yeah, as a complete aside, I looked up what that film was. It was called What We Did on Our Holiday. It's from 2014, British small budget black comedy, and it was Billy Connolly,
Okay.
who
Yeah.
plays the grandfather, and yeah, his grandchildren go with his final wish as expressed to them, and they cremate him Viking style, much to the horror of the entire extended family. It's a very dark, there's a lot of other stuff going on in the film in the background as well. Like it's very when it's funny, it's very funny, but it's also a very sad film. It's one of those. Anyway, so
yeah, you're right. Most of these are 5%. I was thinking it was always 10% in my head, but you're right. Most of these are 5. It's just
yeah,
like
I felt like their slash was a bit higher than the norm, but even so, that's like it. I mean, it's kind of like there is a question as well at that point where you go like, should, given the complexity and like also the continuing risk involved with getting back into that and then trying to repay that,
Yeah.
should they even
yeah.
bother? Like, should they just say instead, like, we'll just step away, we fucked up, sorry, funds not Safu, you know.
Yeah. Well,
you
this,
know.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to my overall challenge with distributed proof of stake and Cosmos. Like this is, there's a lot of different projects that are coming in that are running validators that like in this case, where we saw that before with stake like Mo, and there's been some other ones in there where not saying they can't run it. I'm just saying that there's a pretty high learning curve in some of these areas in terms of being safe. And it's not just double signing, but there's also security. There's other types of things that go into running an infrastructure security structure around something like this. And so I understand the idea of you want to be able to bring projects into ecosystems, and you want to find ways as project owners or delegations or as foundations to be able to incentivize those projects to come in, right? Like NFT projects or anything else. Like you want to find something to do that. Is this the way? Is there a better way to be able to incentivize somebody like that to bring projects in than just running validators and having, a 10% slash, right? So like, there's like, it seems, I don't know why, like this is my issue, is that like, it's not their role. Like, I understand that there's extra money to be made there, right? So that's kind of the rub in here, is that they can find ways to be able to do NFT drops based off that or something else that gives them extra revenue coming in. But there's risk to this too. And it's not, I don't know. It seems like it's a miss here in terms of, what these sets are going to look like in a couple of years.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of back to that Moultrie, the point Moultrie made a few episodes ago, where I think we've been very like, you should run your own infra. If you're a validator, you shouldn't really be white. I mean, I understand people do white label, but I'm not a big fan of it. To me, it's like, does seem like it's putting your eggs in one basket as a network, and it's sort of a low-key Sybil, and also it's a concentration of power in the hands of people who know how to run nodes, which is like the opposite of decentralization. But then you kind of go, well, if people aren't able to run nodes, then what are you going to do? And then you go, well, okay, so I mean, maybe that does come back again to like the thing that we've been talking about before, which is like, is it all just decentralization theater, and should we just not worry? Like, white labels are fine, blah blah blah. Because actually, the fundamental problem is that we are in a proof of stake system which privileges fast finality over liveness. So we have a small val set, and maybe what we're all doing here is kind of collectively going, well, the income model where you just spin up a validator, stake to yourself, and then Robert's your father's brother is all very well, but only if you have like a much larger val set and maybe no slashing, so that you can accrue those rewards, but not with any risk to the network, and not with potentially even any rewards to delegators, because not all networks, not all proof of stake models have slashing.
I have opinions.
Please.
Does anyone want to hear them?
Please.
I recently have like thought on it a bit, and I don't think it really matters. I think if people want to white label, they should white label. At the end of the day, I'd prefer it if, like, say for example, there was an influencer who was, got a community
Mhm.
and they want to get some income from validating, whether it be a small amount or a shitload. There's different influencers out there at different levels who get different levels of income from their validators, right?
Mhm.
Personally, I would prefer if they teamed with somebody, to and created a team with like another DevOps guy to be able to.
But Stake Like Mo literally did that.
Yeah. So hear me out.
The person white
right?
labeling for them double sign, and there was one of the other double signs
no.
was a
Hear
big
me out.
validator team white labeling. They took down 2 nodes. Like, which network was that a few weeks ago? They took down 2 nodes. Right.
Block Daemon on Juno or Evmos?
I think it was Evmos again, wasn't it? But Block Demon, it was Block Demon, and they were running their node and somebody else's, so it was a white label again.
Right.
And then, not naming any names, but also there are quite a few other influencers that I can think of, and they have other people running their nodes for them.
Yeah.
So it's already happening.
Right? It's not. So there's different things you're talking about there, right? You're talking about white labeling, and you're also talking about them having their own DevOps team, right? So if you take Stake Cedo and friends, they teamed up with DevOps people. They don't white label. If you take Stake Like Mo, he white labeled with someone who has nodes for a bunch of other people, and that's the same with like Block Daemon or whatever. They were like in a group of white labeled nodes, right? And their operator double signed them all. So there's different things we're talking about there. I would prefer that, if an influencer wanted to start a node to generate revenue from it, that they would do it with their own DevOps team. They find some people and they team up, and then that's what they do. But ultimately, if there's a trend of influencers getting tombstoned, then people will eventually notice, and people will just stop delegating to influence. It'll just be like a self-regulating thing. So that's the risk people take, and if they want to delegate to their influencer because they like them, then that's their prerogative. I would prefer that people delegate to career validators, because we know the shit inside out, and we are very good at it without like having a big head. But we spend a lot of time in test nets. We spend a lot of time breaking shit. We spend a lot of time thinking about, risk and how we set up our systems. So, that's the difference. Someone else who's just a DevOps getting a weekly pay from their influencer pal probably doesn't spend that amount of time in there. And it's evident when it comes down to the result, right? So whether it be like
at the same
a
time, I
DM
don't think
wants
we're
to run
immune from
a
like a
node,
mistake.
whether it be an influencer wants to run a node, whether it be like, Commonwealth Bank of Australia wants to run a node, give it a go. It's like a competitive landscape, right? So
Right, but I'm going to put it out there that like I think your point about like people not having skin in the game being maybe a bit more likely to make a mistake, or not having like loads of skin in the game because being paid to run a node, whatever. I can probably buy that. Like it's very different when you are representing the company that is running the nodes, and you don't want to be made a fool of in public, and you want to provide a standard of service, and also you've got your own self stake. That's, I don't know about how it works in Australia, but if we get ourselves slashed, we're still going to pay tax on the full amount before we are slashed. So that's a really great way of going into loss for the year.
So if you were running like your node as a individual, you could just take that as a loss against your income. I imagine it should be the same there. So it would come out in the wash. But as a business, it just comes out in the wash anyway, because we only take our totals at the end of the year. So
right, yeah. I mean,
right.
I think it would be a bit. I think it would on the tax system here. It would depend on when you compounded, but you'd obviously have to pay tax on it at the point of compounding. So you could potentially end up slashing yourself and then losing money. like losing a lot of money based on where the price was. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing I'm trying to get to is like I think that like the market decides is like a fair enough. Like it's an argument. It's one of the arguments. But I think the thing I guess I'm a little bit cautious. I think we all feel, joking aside, we all do feel some sympathy for node operators that are in that position, because nobody's immune from a mistake, right? That's the thing. If I've learned one thing in the last 10 years, like, I'll put my hand up and say I've pulled down a production system minutes before like a key demo to a government before. Sometimes these things happen, and then when you do the 5 whys of like how it happened, you're like, well, in hindsight, I mean, like uni 4, like failing on the second block, like in hindsight, it's obvious like what happened, and it's obvious that we should have been more clear about like the configuration that we expected on the startup of the nodes and stuff, but we didn't know about that thing at the time. Forgivable mistake, whatever. And a lot of these mistakes are forgivable in hindsight, but the damage is already done, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem with running alpha software in production. And the thing is, like, like Magnus and Barry were saying from Skip the other day, like if you dig around in the stack much and you start seeing to-dos, they're not big ones, but like it's got that sense of like, we still are only like a year and a bit into IBC, right? And sometimes we do also forget that a little bit, because we are running this like a production system, and it is a significant part of the revenue of our companies, if not like our full-time job, right, to run this stuff. So that's kind of wild given how alpha a lot of this stuff is, right? So it is, sometimes I am just like, well, for all the test nets you run and whatever, like you only got to make one mistake. You only sign twice, right? That was the episode name we had a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it is very like there, but for the grace of God go I. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And even like I'm still going back to the main point, which I agree with what Noel said, but the forgiveness on a delegation side around those types of mistakes you might as well make the slashing thing 0. Like if nobody cares, then there is that idea that Noel was saying around like those validators will end up going away over time or over the long period of time, which that's proven not to be true, right? Like I think some of these have actually come back stronger after than they had before the slash, which is or before the tombstone, which is like crazy to me. So
maybe,
I don't know if
maybe someone should make like an ongoing chart and categorize validators as like, corporations, career validators, influencer validators, and have like a tombstone count.
Oh, do you like
Instagram?
Do you like block panes, whatever it was, the taxonomy of validators, and then just put who's?
Yeah.
I mean, but then the thing is, I think I don't know. I bet you would find that the ones who are small businesses and are all engineers would probably have the lowest tombstone count, and they would also have at this point the highest blood pressure of their entire lives. That is my prediction.
I don't think you need to have high blood pressure. Like, it's for me, it's I don't know. It's pretty cruisy for me. As long as I'm on top of upgrades, then it's my infrastructure. I have very little problems with it. I can spin up and spin down nodes with ease. Like I know that my signing strategy is solid. I've been through lots of fucked up test nets and always been signing at the head. I think that the setup I'm using is solid enough that I don't have to have high blood pressure. And, occasionally there's a fucked up upgrade, but very, like, I've never, it's, I'm not in the percentage that's the cause of it because of the way we're set up. And we've always got multiple nodes. And if it's like a high risk, in my opinion, upgrade, I'll actually just not upgrade one. I'll start the daemon manually, so it just goes off when the upgrade height, and then have another one like automatically upgrade with Cosmovisor. And if there's a fuck up, then I've got like a clean database.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think like you can mitigate your risk to like bring your blood pressure down. But
yeah, that's fair enough.
I would like to like have a look at some of the comments here. So going to like Ben Davis all the way back here and sort of jumping back a little bit, I didn't understand it. He said no context gamer nodes is the new context Hern. I googled Hern. Can anyone explain to me what Hern is? Because the Google definition I still couldn't fucking understand. The definition is past participle of here. So explain yourself, Ben Davis. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, man. So Coin Waters was from a chain perspective. It's not fair to those that stay up all night and spend time and spend full time maintain. The chain should reward based on this. Look, that'd be nice, but you know, in a free market economy, like there's just nothing we can do about that. You can't force a decentralized thing to reward a certain people. And, you know, whilst you'd like to recognize, or whilst you'd like to have the broader community recognize the efforts that are put in by like certain groups, you can't. They're just, they're going to be influenced by whoever's screaming the loudest at them. And whether that's from like lukewarm engagement or causing anger en masse, or, you know, being good at communicating your efforts, you know, there's all different ways, and the market's just going to choose who they're going to choose. And I think inherently, like a lot of operators are now forced to become influence of some description. So we have a podcast. Whilst we don't touch on users much, like we don't really have the right reach or user base or reach. But, you know, we do this. We all have a Twitter account, and we all try to engage on some level to have people notice us, to come and stake with us, right? We've been forced into that.
And from a practical perspective, I had deleted all my socials before I had to recreate new social media accounts because of running validators, because people were like, where are you? And we were losing delegations like because of it.
Sure.
And yeah, it is a weird, but then this is sort of back to, you know, you can't, it's very, very hard to make incentives with algorithms that actually work in the real world. And like people have tried a lot in the past. Like this is not a new area in economics. We're just able to iterate on it incredibly fast in crypto. For like the first time, you can literally design an incentive system, deploy it, change it a few days later, redeploy it. That is new. But this is stuff that people have been playing around with for, well, I mean, for thousands of years, but like with an academic basis behind it for like the last 40 or whatever, you know, it's pretty well established at this point. So you go, well, you know, I think what we saw with Prop 16 and a lot of that stuff, that was the first time it became really, really clear that the incentive structure and what had been put in place for governance for these DAOs, for like for Cosmos maybe, had grown, scaled past the original design of that module of that system, right? And it no longer functioned. And what filled the gap was social consensus came in and just went, do this thing that's completely like, your options are A, B, or C, and we want you to do F, right? Do that. And what happened was everybody wanted, well, no, a majority wanted F, and they actually got L or something, like some completely fifth thing, some sixth thing, whatever. It was an eventual compromise that was arrived at completely off chain. And so like now you look at slashing, and like Usurper says, it's mad, it's failed. Like slashing, the hard slash has now happened enough times that we've seen it isn't a significant enough slash to actually affect to actually do its original intended effect, right? So you and
We've had
that's
10%
also
slashes without reimbursement, and people go back to the same fucking operator. Like you would have to be mad.
Yeah. So, but like, this is the thing. Like, you look at that and you go, okay. So there are two things going on, right? One, there are some people that it could be 100% and they would go back, but that's not everybody. The majority of people are price elastic to some degree in terms of that penalty they've taken. So, number one, you go, well, what is that number? And number two, you go, if that number is too high, that the chances of just penalizing the network or changing the way people think about the risk structure to the point of being like, I'm not going to run it, risk is too high. If you bought in, if you had to buy in $100,000, $150,000,
be different.
And the slash was 100%. Yeah, even if you are a career engineer, you would look at that and you go, that is high risk to me. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So
or I'm going to train myself to make sure that I'm not in that position. Right.
Yeah, and you're going to run one network at most. And right now in a bear, if you're running one network, even with a decent self-stake, you're probably not making enough to break even. So you're back to a situation where that economic structure is going to cause people who understand the risk, i.e. the node operators who are thoughtful and experienced enough to recognize what they're seeing, to not run. So you're like, okay, so what we've done is we've successfully showed this group of people that if you get slashed, you should leave, and they will now do that. But a side effect of that is that experienced and potentially desirable node operators will also recognize the flip side of that and possibly not run.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go, okay, well, what's the other extreme? And the other extreme is have no slashing. And I don't know. I haven't really thought about that one enough to step through what are potential consequences of that. But I assume, there will be another set of consequences, which... So this is the question, right? If slashing is broken as an incentive mechanism, then what can we replace it with? I don't know. Somebody smart could chip in,
or the percentage is too low, or something else, right?
There's none here.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you have like the flip side of that is osmosis, and they just don't want a slashing at all. Well, that's their downtime. But do they have double sign slashing?
I would assume so. I can check real quick. I assume it's probably 5%.
The slashing percentage on Evmos is like the highest, right?
It's 10%.
I don't think I've seen any other 10%ers.
I was just looking at
most other chains at default 5%.
Yeah, we were talking about that before when you were off for a second. Yeah, they're all defaulting to 5% except for Evmos is at 10. Yeah, but again, and we've seen more double signs on Evmos than any other network. So it's not. And I think the other piece is that those operators didn't even know that existed. So not only is it not an incentive, but there's no warning within. Maybe that's a tendermint warning on create val. Like maybe that should be added as a before that create val command comes to say, when do you understand what this means? Like if this is a double sign, then this is blah blah blah. Because I don't think there's any. The barrier is so low to be able to run, and the barrier is so low to be able to get in the set in some of these areas that I don't think people understand what that means or what that risk is.
The barrier is only getting fucking lower as well. Like we're making it so easy. Even other validators are making it so easy for people who have no fucking idea what they're doing to run a validator.
Yeah,
and they can fly under the radar for long enough to gather a lot of delegations as well. So
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, like you said before, it is a free market, and it maybe at 5%, it's just not enough. I think people get more. That's part. I mean, people get pissed about that, but the other piece is like if they've just delegated in that they can't redelegate for the for the unbonding period with 14 or 28 days or 21 days or whatever. And sometimes they get more angry about that, about missing on rewards on being bonded to a jailed validator than they do on the double sign, right? So
they're missing. Well, I mean, so there seems to be like more emphasis that they're missing out on rewards than what they are missing some of their capital.
Yeah, exactly.
But well, I mean, some of them refund it, so maybe it's a quick way to unbond, get slashed, and get a reimbursement.
There you go.
So what's bonkers to me, reading their Twitters, right? So I saw in the recent slashing that in their Twitter post, people were saying in there that, thanks for the transparency. Like,
mm-hmm.
They weren't fucking transparent. They didn't say that they were incompetent and that's why they double signed. They made up some bullshit. So
Yeah. And they didn't say Tombstone. They said they just got jailed or something similar to that, right? But I think they were trying to relate it back to Stake Like Mo, which I think was in a little bit of denial about it.
Well, they said this thing. So they said the thing about having to do pruning, I think, was in there, right? But they didn't say that they didn't know where the private validator key was, and they copied it across to a new node and started them both at the same time. Like,
right.
There's nothing about that,
right?
So it was just like, oh, it's an accident. Whereas, no, it wasn't an accident. It was that you didn't know what you were doing.
Yes, it was an avoidable accident for sure.
Absolutely,
there's no doubt about
it. And but people are just bamboozled by bullshit. So
yeah, and like I said, we've said this before. Like there's a really high bar for you'll get it next time, and we all make mistakes, and
we all make mistakes. Good luck next time. I'll redelegate to your new thing, and
exactly
hopefully not lose another 10%.
Like it's do it.
Mind-boggling.
Yep.
But
it's nuts.
This is. What's Coinwater saying? I'm sure we'll get cut soon. This is awesome topic and timely for our chain. Yeah, who knows when the rug's coming. Cause Less Harm says, great episode, gents. Thanks, mate. I think I like to just talk about random shit too, by the way, and not necessarily always have a guest.
Yeah,
so I think we can tease out a lot of stuff when we talk about this. I also get that, many people who listen to this might just get angry about shit that we say because it's been quite truthful and I'm not trying to sledge anyone, but I think that people should be more transparent in what happens, and it seems that for the most part they're not. And look, something could happen to us one day. Something could happen to Needlecast or RHINO, and I'm sure people are going to say shit about us. But
yeah,
but there's no magic shield up there that makes a career validator immune to mistakes.
No.
But I think we're better set to mitigate them, as in a more probably reliable way than people who don't have a fucking clue what they're doing. So,
well, I think the flip side of that though is even all the things that we do, threshold signing or TMKMS or running in an enclave or a VPS in a certain way with a certain set of firewalls and whatnot. However you do this stuff, at some point you're building on at some point you're running somebody's binary, you're building somebody's code, you're building TMKMS, right? Have I stepped through every line of code in TMKMS? No. Would I understand it if I did? No, because my background is graph data, streaming data, functional programming, some bit of type theory.
For all we know, the first function of running TMKMS could be reaching out and sending your private key to someone.
Yeah, and right. So number one, it could be doing that. I don't think it is, based on what it seems to be doing traffic-wise. But this is the other thing. Pure cryptography, a lot of the cryptography going on in crypto is fundamentally complicated, and you have to have a CS degree or a master's really in cryptography and maths to really at a meaningful level grok that stuff, fundamentally grasp it. And I think that's the tricky thing, I guess, is that as soon as you, and that's where I'm always a bit cautious, because I'm until you, it's such a deep and complicated stack that we're working with here that it is a bit risky to feel like you are out of the woods,
Yeah.
Because there's just too much to know. There's just too much to know to ever really truly sleep peacefully at night. Said the paranoid guy.
On that note.
Yeah, like that.